Hello, I wanted to talk to you about speaking today, speaking another language, which is a topic that I haven't really talked about for a while. Well, for a long while, I don't think. I don't think I've really talked about language learning style topics for quite a while now. So let's get started, shall we? Okay, if you are a listener who has been listening to this podcast for a long time, let's just say a few years, then you will have heard me say that my plan to learn Japanese, the second language that I'm learning, is to mostly just have loads and loads of input and do very little in the way of output, and then one day, just naturally start outputting Japanese. And that plan had some merit, I have to say. It was sort of, it wasn't a bad idea. I do remember years ago, going back quite a few years now, when I would try and speak Japanese, and it felt impossible at that time, just because there was so much vocabulary I was missing, so much grammar that was unknown. Although at the same time, I don't like the idea of sort of like thinking, how would I make this sentence in Japanese before I start speaking it? I wanted to just be able to say things naturally, without doing that. Sort of like the way that we all learn our first language. So yes, that is why the goal was very much just loads and loads of input, and then naturally I'll start speaking. And like I say, it did seem to work up until a point. But language learning, as I'm sure you know, is one of those things that keeps evolving depending on what stage you're at. So that may have been a great approach initially, just listening and listening and listening, and just naturally picking up grammar and doing some reading as well, and naturally picking up vocabulary. I think that has been very helpful. And when I do speak Japanese, I think some of it sounds a bit more natural than it might do otherwise. There are still tons of mistakes, of course, but I think one or two things I picked up, well, maybe quite a few things actually, that definitely don't sound like textbook style, very formal sort of Japanese. And I'm actually very aware of that when I'm talking as well, and I don't know why, but I don't want to sound too natural when I'm speaking. That's weird, isn't it? I don't want to give people the impression that my ability is better than it is. Like if I mimic like a really natural sounding tone, or say something in a way that I know is a bit more slang like, then it could give people the impression that my ability is a bit better than it actually is. So I always feel like I'm holding back a bit, never quite just letting the Japanese come out naturally, I suppose, which probably isn't a great thing to do, in all honesty. Anyway, what I wanted to say was, getting back on topic again, is that it's the way we learn a language is constantly evolving, and I feel like that approach is no longer working for me. It's still beneficial. It's still, I'm still able to learn a lot from it. So it's not like I would just stop. It's not like I would change now and say, that's it. I don't need any more input. I don't need any more listening. I don't need any more reading. That's certainly not true, and I absolutely do. But one thing that I have been neglecting because of this approach, this just input, and who cares about the output, that sort of approach, would be the actual output, of course. I've not been focusing on it ever, really. It's just been a sort of secondary thing. It's like the input happens, and then because I'm learning more, vocabulary, learning more grammar, I'm able to output some. But what I've realized, and I've realized this many years ago now, I think, is that to speak more, you have to practice speaking more, which is something that should be very easy for me to do, really. I mean, I'm very fortunate being married to a Japanese woman. I have sort of, like, I was going to say like always on. That sounds like, I don't know, machine or something. But I mean, like always accessible potential to, you know, be able to speak to someone in Japanese. So there's someone I could practice my speaking to whenever I want, really. So in that sense, I'm really fortunate. But the weird thing is, and I've definitely mentioned this before as well, is that I tend not to do that at all. So I tend to speak in English, and my wife tends to speak in Japanese, and we have a conversation like that. And the reason is just because it's life. As in, like, I don't know, you're trying to have a relationship with someone, and sometimes you don't want to put like this artificial barrier in front of yourself. You know, like, let's make things harder. You know, let's practice Japanese here when I want to have a conversation about paying bills or something. It just adds like this extra friction to your life, which you don't always have the luxury to afford. Studying for me has always been like a bit of a hobby, something that I do when I have free time, something that I do when, I don't know, like my head is in the right space, if that makes sense. Like, generally I'd have to be in a good mood as well, and just sort of thinking like, ooh, what shall I do today? Oh, I know, I'll study some Japanese. That sounds like fun. But yeah, I'm not always in that frame of mind, so I don't always practice. It would be more helpful to me, I suppose, if my wife was incapable of understanding English, and then I had no choice but to communicate in Japanese. That would be incredibly mentally draining, I think, in the beginning. Actually, the weird thing was, when the first few times we met, that was pretty much the case. We only used to talk in Japanese, as my wife's English level wasn't as good as it is now. But anyway, now that the option's there, you know, I've got like the easy path or the hard path. Maybe on a day when I'm a bit more, you know, I feel like I've got a bit more energy, then I can choose the hard path. Or I don't know, like a day when I've been studying Japanese anyway, and I've got more like motivation for that kind of thing, then I will choose the hard path. But every other day, it's always going to be the easy path, I'm afraid. So what that means is that my speaking ability has remained pretty low. It hasn't grown so much. I mean, it is growing, because I still believe it's true. You know, what I said ages ago, that sort of the more input you have, the better your output will be, because, well, obviously if you become more familiar with various grammar patterns and words, you can more readily access them when you're speaking. You can use them more easily when you're speaking. So that still is true, but definitely I should be practicing speaking. You need to practice speaking to get better at it. That's a pretty obvious thing. It's not, you know, I'm not saying anything amazing here that I'm sure we don't already know, but I guess I'm just telling you what can happen if you don't. Like, essentially, don't be like me. If you can, if you've got the opportunity to do so, if you've got the extra bit of like mental power you need, the extra energy to do so, then yes, I would definitely encourage you to speak, do some speaking practice. As what happens to me at the moment is, like, someone will speak to me and it's like this sudden shock to my system, like sort of like changing a gear. You know, like changing from English gear into Japanese gear all of a sudden, and I wasn't prepared for it at all. And it sort of like throws my brain, like, I don't know, like it's just because there's no preparation. It's just like, I've completely forgotten how to answer that question, or what do I say, or I start speaking and I find that it's just like, it just does not flow naturally, which is actually years ago when I was doing speaking practice a lot more. Sometimes what I would do before practicing with a language partner is I would do like maybe half an hour of shadowing before starting that session. And I noticed if I did that, it sort of like kicked my brain into Japanese gear. And I would notice that my Japanese would flow a lot better than if I'd just gone straight into it, just like English, and then talking Japanese. So that little bit of like rehearsal, that little bit of practice with shadowing before starting that language exchange, it made a big difference. And so, it makes perfect sense why all of a sudden, if I'm just expected to speak in Japanese, it just throws me. And I find it hard getting into that rhythm. And I don't know, just being able to easily like recall words and, put them together in more natural sounding ways. So I guess that's just like, I suppose like a self-evaluation. I think I should probably put a lot less effort into like listening practice and maybe make speaking the priority. Ideally, I think a language partner would be a good way of doing it. Even though I can speak to my wife in Japanese at any point in time, I can practice with her. Like I said earlier, it's not always easy to do that. But if you are taking time out of your day, if you have scheduled in a lesson, like this is, either a language exchange or maybe with a teacher or something like that, for some reason that works for me. And if it works for me, then that's obviously what I need to do. I feel like that's the next sort of path to walk down to level up my Japanese, but I have been reluctant to do it because it's just so easy and enjoyable listening to the things that I listen to, the podcasts I listen to, the TV programs I watch. So I am going to have to push myself a bit more if I want to see some good progress. Okay, that is it for today's episode, and I hope to speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.